that injection of the visco theory to the knife part, I'm feeling a little better because injecting, Rajiv, you're hearing?
Yes.
Injecting, as you used to inject the visco at various points. So I always thought, as comparing my cornea with the vitreous of the years, the vitreous was sacrosanct. To me, cornea was sacrosanct. And it always appeared I might be damaging the desmoids or the endothelium by too much of pressure. But then when you saw my videos, I always worked in an inflated eye, though initially I used to soften it up. I'm not sure whether I'll be answering the question was directed at me, but still, the only issue that goes with me for the present is the cost. And so we'll relate the cost of this smart SICS to femto, and then we'll discuss. No investment here, huge investment there. Earnings, we'll take them to the same level. Rajiv has already taken it.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful input, sir. Dr. Sahu, sir, are you able to tell any comments? Are you able to hear us, sir? I think there is again the connectivity problem with him. I think we can go with Dr. Dev Prasad Gopal from Bangalore. Dr. Dev, I'd like to know what is your favorite choice of incision? There is straight incision, frown incision, and smile incision, Blumenthal cuts, or the chevron incision. What is your preferred choice of incision, and what do you suggest it to the juniors who are there for the postgraduates in this webinar?
No, my preference would be the superior temporal. A frown incision would be better because it would remove the superior rectus suture also. Without taking that, you can just take a superior temporal frown incision. That would be better. And as you graduate from case to case, then you can directly go to the steeper meridian. I would prefer a frown incision than a straight incision.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question to Dr. Rajiv Raut again. Sir, we have a question here. Is Dr. Shraddha Khole from Pune, that can we use this software in case of keratoconus? And also, what kind of IOLs do you prefer? Does it make any change with the PMMA or the foldable kind of lenses for this procedure of yours?
Yes, I use monofocal, simple IOLs made by some companies. I do not use absolutely any fancy IOLs, and I am very happy, and my patients are very happy with the IOL that I use. The reason is I do not try to sell an IOL. I try to give a service for the result. And I believe that fancy IOLs do not give essentially better results. Second thing is...
go ahead.
Sorry, the first part of the question?
Do we use this software? Is it relevant even in case of keratoconus or in cases where there is a silicone oil filled eyes?
Yes. Silicone oil filled eyes, definitely the software gives very good results. We have done it in at least 50 to 100 cases in the last 2-3 years because we have a proper retina department, so we get to do a lot of these cases. Now coming to keratoconus, so far I have done 5 keratoconus cases with cataract cases with this IOL, and the results are extremely variable. In fact, in the same patient, I operated on a school teacher who had keratoconus in both eyes, and to my pleasant surprise, one eye, the cornea became so good that she had aided 6x6 vision. And then I wanted to repeat the same thing with the other eye, and in the other eye we could not change the astigmatism at all. Therefore, the use of this technique in keratoconus cases would be a topic for further research. I cannot give any comment on this.
Next question is to Dr. Jagannath Boramani, sir. Sir, you have shifted from the peribulbar to the topical anesthesia. What made you to shift, and how many percentage of cases in your day-to-day practice you still prefer to do it under topical anesthesia for SICS?
I do topical anesthesia in all cases, 100%. But I cannot say that I do 100%, complete the surgery 100% under topical anesthesia. So my take on this is that you can always start with the topical anesthesia. The advantage in SICS is that always the conjunctiva is cut. You have got a peritomy. So when you're required, even if patient should be informed that even if they have slight discomfort, you let us know, because we can always inject subtenon with a blunt cannula under the conjunctiva and under the tenon. But the surgery remains preclase for the patient. So always start under topical anesthesia. Maybe in 30% of the patients, you may supplement it with subtenon or if required with intracameral. Now I have done a lot of surgeries, even wherein there was a PC rupture, but I have completed the surgery under topical anesthesia only, and this has done twice in live surgery. Once in your institute in Hubli, this has happened, and the surgery was completed under topical anesthesia, and once it was done in Malaysia also. So it depends upon the surgeon's comfort. Otherwise, topical I feel is the best.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, Dr. Sunil Kasbekar from Aurangabad, he is quite impressed with your technique, Dr. Raut, sir. So he has multiple questions, but cut short. I would like to ask one of his questions. Can we use toric lenses with this technique?
Yes, lenses with this technique, but in the learning period, it is better not to, because you may overcorrect by your toric lens. Right now, the toric lens that I use is only for cases who have pre-existing cylinder between 80 and 100 degrees, and there also I use about 80% of the pre-existing cylinder in my toric lens.
Okay. So we have another question from Dr. Subrata Sen Gupta from Kolkata, and also one doctor from Shankar Netralaya. They want to know about the pinpoint anesthesia technique which you described. Can you just quickly tell us what is this pinpoint anesthesia, sir?
Yes, pinpoint anesthesia is done on the outer temporal quadrant. It is done 6 millimeters behind the limbus. If you look at the history of pinpoint anesthesia, it was invented by a Turkish surgeon and published in International Journal of Cataract and Refractive Surgery about 20 years ago. That time a fixed stainless steel curved cannula used to be used. I think even today many retina surgeons use a similar cannula to inject anesthesia. Here you make a 1 millimeter incision on the conjunctiva, then you make a 1 millimeter incision in the tenon, and when you see the bare sclera, then you introduce your cannula into it and you inject the anesthetic. The effect is instant. Next moment you can start surgery, and you don't need. I have so far never used any intracameral anesthetic because I am worried about getting some UVL reaction with it, and I have not used any retrobulbar or peribulbar in the last 20 years. The only thing I did was, when you use this metal cannula, the curved metal cannula to give pinpoint, then you may rupture the lacrimal duct because there is a very close anatomical relationship, especially if you are not really subtenon and if you are going superficially, there is a chance that you may rupture the lacrimal duct. Therefore, I made a modification in the pinpoint. I started using soft outer jacket of the intracath. Intracath, as you know, is used while giving IV fluids. It comes as a sterile disposable packet. So we open that packet, we remove the needle from it, and the soft outer jacket is directly attached to a 2cc syringe. Now, the advantage of the soft outer jacket is, if you are not subtenon, it will not go in. It will just not go in. Whereas with a stiff metal cannula, if you push under the tenon, whether you are under the tenon, you are in the superficial to the tenon, it will go through. But a soft jacket of outer jacket of the intracath, if you put it in and your plane is not right, it will not go in. And therefore, any lacrimal duct is totally avoided. If you are in the right plane, it goes through without using any pressure.
The question is from Dr. Amit Porwal. He wants you to elaborate the use of manual Placido disc intraoperatively.
Yes, we started with a manual Placido disc, which is the so-called handheld keratoscope. I used this for about 3 years. I found fantastic results using the same technique but with a manual keratoscope. But when I reviewed the cases which were failed, I realized that the intended stretching of horizontal meridian or whatever was the intended end point could not be achieved in many cases. I was under the impression that I have achieved it, but on looking at the video after the surgery, many times I find that I have not achieved the surgery was giving great results but was not reproducible, and that's when we graduated from handheld Placido disc to an online image of the center of the cornea, and it has been a really big step because it made the surgery totally reproducible and achieving the endpoint became extremely predictable.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have next question from Dr. Krishna Prasad Hubli to Dr. Dev Prasad. Dr. Dev Prasad, you can unmute yourself. Your preference of incision in cases of high against the rule astigmatism.
Can you hear me? Raman?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me?
Yeah. Is it Dr. Sahu, sir?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, Sahu, sir, I'll come back to you in a second. Dr. Dev, can you quickly answer this question? Your preference of incision in high against the rule astigmatism? Dr. Dev? We can go ahead with Sahu, sir. I think we got his connection. Sahu, sir, you are able to hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, tell me. Well, I welcome you all to this great meeting. And as I foreseen, in 2005, I thought the change is coming and that the SICS is going to prevail. And thanks to Rajiv now, he has contributed a lot and taken it to a next level. Now those who have, I think somebody was asking about femto, and in the time of femto, what is the relevance of this? Now I can tell you, now this is the age of India, and now all the world is going to look to India, and Rajiv Raut, we are lucky we have got a talent like him, and now everybody is going to take this method. I have done around 50 to 60 cases and I'm totally happy, though it is not a scientific statement because my data is not yet compiled properly, but my experience is very good. Patient always come back for the next time, as Rajiv told, and I feel those who are sitting on the fence should come first and be in the forefront of this movement, because all of you are going to teach the world how to save money and give the best result. With American economy going down, they will also, even yesterday I had a publication with Susan McDonald, and she must be keeping up waiting in the night want to see this relay, and she is one of those pioneers there. So I am telling you all, leave your doubt, come get the training and be in the forefront of training others.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sahu sir, for those kind words and inspirational words for the people who would like to follow SICS. My next question is to Dr. Rajiv Raut sir, is by Dr. Shekhar Paranjpe from Maharashtra. His question is, can we achieve the sphericality by LRI and achieve the same results?
LRM? Oh, yes. Limbal relaxing.
Limbal relaxing, yeah.
Shekhar Saab, good evening, and I cannot answer, unfortunately, I cannot answer this question because I never believe in taking any incision in the cornea. So I have neither done RK ever in my life for refractive surgery, and nor will I ever do any LRI. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer this question. My objections to cutting on the cornea are, number one, the mechanism of how the cornea will behave after this relaxing limbal incision. The mechanism is not really very well known. That's why there are some heavy complications. The incision keeps on gaping, the cornea keeps on flattening. Number two, we have seen how even a small cut on the cornea predisposes the patient to HSV, herpes simplex viral infection. And even with small traumas, you see so many post-operative herpes simplex virus infections on the cornea. These are the two reasons why I do not take any relaxing incisions, and I have no experience to answer this question. Second thing, if you permit, Dr. Joshi,
Yes, sir.
I would like to also make one more important statement, and that is some of the cataracts, which we see especially in people who are 80 years or older, are so brown, so hard, and so big that it is very dangerous to do phaco in these cases. I have seen a lot of complications happening after phaco in these brown, hard cataracts in elderly patients, whereas with small incision cataract surgery and with proper experience and proper training, one can do every type of cataract without the risk of having a major complication. This, I suppose, becomes very important if you are in private practice like me. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question from Dr. Atul Sonwane from LASIK is, at which clock hour the visco is injected? And I just want to add my question also to that is, what's the end point of this visco injection, sir?
Yes, now we are going to change our current flat cornea into a cornea which has been told to us by the computer how the flat meridian should be. Now to achieve this, first step is to inject the visco in that meridian, in the periphery. This will give us the bounce, the back pressure. And the second step is the pressure with the knife before you enter and extend your incision exactly in the opposite direction. So the direction where the visco is injected is the direction of the intended axis. And how to achieve the exact intended axis is simply a matter of practice, 50 to 100 cases. Thank you.
Right, sir. Sir, the next question is to Dr. Ravi Trehan. Sir, wanted to tell something about the pinpoint anesthesia. And there is a question from Dr. Chandrakant Shetye that why can't we give pinpoint anesthesia at 6 o'clock position? I think yourself and Dr. Rajiv can answer this question.
Hello.
Ravi ji, आप करेंगे?
I just want to add one line.
Ravi sir, you have to mute your laptop and use only mobile.
You can
Talk from little bit far away from the laptop, sir, please. Since he is using both the systems.
Hello. If you use the two systems, it's give the eco voice, sir.
But you can decrease the laptop volume.
Yes. Is it audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, it's audible.
Is it audible now?
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
I just want to add one line in pinpoint anesthesia, because people who start using it, they must know that vertical movements persist. Patient can see above and down, horizontal movements stopped. Rest of the things Dr. Raut can explain. Thank you, sir.
Yes. The first reason why it is given on the upper side and not at 6 o'clock is the incision is at 12 o'clock. The closer you are to the incision, the better it is. It has maximum effect in the area of the incision. Second thing, 6 o'clock. If you are sitting behind the head of the patient and if you want to inject something at 6 o'clock, then the patient sees your hand. Now, this is a very important thing. The patient gets anxious if he sees a hand which is very close to the eye, or it's a normal, then you start a normal reflex of spasm of the orbicularis oculi. And this threatening movement at 6 o'clock, if the patient can see, will probably start a spasm which will last throughout the surgery and trouble you throughout the surgery. This makes a difference in a small but important number of patients. So, 3 reasons for giving it on the upper temporal side. 1, incision is in the same region. Number 2, no threatening movements at 6 o'clock, so we don't start any ocular spasm. And the last is, though many surgeons don't use it anymore, I still use subconjunctival injection, which I give exactly at the same place where I have given the pinpoint anesthesia, and therefore it's easier for me to give it in the upper temporal quadrant. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the next question is from Dr. Krishna Prasad to Dr. Boramani, sir.
Yes.
Do you change your peritomy technique for the patients who are needing glaucoma surgery?
Yes. Kindly repeat the question.
Do you change the peritomy technique for the patients requiring glaucoma surgeries?
No, most of the times I do both the surgeries. You're talking about the combined surgeries or already operated glaucoma surgery?
No. If you want to do a glaucoma surgery,
Yeah.
then do you change your peritomy technique as ideally you do it in SICS when you want to do a combined cataract as well as glaucoma surgery?
Yeah, generally I do combined cataract and glaucoma surgery under one peritomy only. I do a very large peritomy. On one side I do SICS and slightly at a different place I do the trabeculectomy. And then cover it with conjunctiva. So it is done under one flap only, both the surgeries. Because many times my incisions are U-shaped or very small, 3.5 to 4 millimeter. So I get a space also.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is a question from Dr. Abhay Khurana from Batinda to Dr. Rajiv Rawat. Are there any exclusion criteria, that is, which eyes are not suitable to be operated on this software?
The exclusion criteria remain the same as those criteria for which you cannot do small incision cataract surgery with an incision at 12 o'clock. Most important being scleral melting or corneal pathology or corneoscleral pathology at 12 o'clock. So if I have to shift my incision to any place other than 12 o'clock, then this software cannot be used because the nomogram is not made for any other site of the incision. That is the main exclusion criteria.
Okay, sir. So we have another question to you. Is the larger incision, would it be required for the cases like brown cataract, as you mentioned that you are having only 6 mm incision? So do you really think that it has to be extended and in your technique, and how does it matter if it extends?
So far, I have operated on some very large cataracts. I found that 6 millimeter incision is more than enough to operate on any cataract, absolutely any cataract. The reason is, this is not the topic of today's webinar, but let me say, the reason is I chop every nucleus in the back and I divide it perfectly in 2 pieces by using very simple choppers, and for me therefore the largeness of the nucleus is not an issue when it comes to size of the incision. We can discuss how to chop a nucleus so that it becomes easier to take out in some other webinar, because for that one would need a specific video. Another method which has been used in the past, which we all used to use 20 years ago, was breaking the nucleus in the tunnel, which was called intratunnel phaco-fracture. Now, this technique I gave up once I started chopping. The reason being, when you take out the nucleus with a vectis through a tunnel, whether the nucleus is large or it is small, lot of lens matter sticks to the inner walls of the tunnel. So can you turn this off so they can see your face? Yeah. Now, a lot of nucleus matter the nucleus matter sticks to the inner walls of the tunnel, especially on the lateral and the medial side. Now, though the full surgery happens afterwards, irrigation, aspiration happens, visco expression happens, or removal of the visco after IL implantation happens. Though a lot of flow happens after this nucleus is removed, we have done some study by scraping the inner walls of the tunnel with a glass cannula and then staining that secretion. And we have found that some remnants, microscopic remnants of the cortex still remain in the attached to the walls of the tunnel. Now, as you all know, any part of the human body, when you put it somewhere else, it becomes antigenic. So when you take out the cortex from where it is supposed to be, when you transplant that cortex into the walls of the tunnel, it becomes antigenic. It causes a chronic scleritis, and sometimes after doing a perfect surgery, this small problem may ruin your life and your case. So I completely avoid intratunnel phaco-fracture and take out my nucleus by dividing it into two small parts in the back. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ranjit sir, please go ahead, sir.
I've just got one thing to add to what Rajiv has been saying in this last few seconds, I would say. Whenever we take out a big nucleus through a small tunnel, stretch it, we might break it in the tunnel, we might do any such procedure in the tunnel, we tend to add to the astigmatum. The tunnel, if stretched by the nucleus or by any probe or by any instrument, adds to the astigmatism. One thing. And another thing that I would say, when we started this, intratunnel phaco-fracture used to come as a complication to our procedure. So that we don't have to face it, we used to do the sandwich technique, place a what do we call that, hook on the top and bring the two out as if we are using a forceps. And another thing that I would like to say is, you are asking about that against the rule, high against the rule astigmatism. That is one part where I think in my era we were not able to do much, because I found that SIA was the least in temporal incisions, and for this against the rule astigmatism had to go temporally. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Sir, there is another question from Dr. Padmanabh Shyam from UK, United Kingdom. I would like. Sir, how many percentage of people or how many ophthalmologists do practice SICS in India? Sir, you have to unmute yourself. Yes, sir. No, we are not been able to hear you, sir.
I can answer for him. I think more than 90% of ophthalmologists in India do small incision surgery at some point of time. I mean, even very accomplished phaco surgeons also still do SICS for certain selected cases. And I think it may be much even more than that 90%.
Great. Sir, there is to Dr. Rajiv, sir, there is another question from Dr. Kavita Porwal and Dr. Trehan as well. How do you do this surgery or use this software in cases of scarred corneas or in cases of hazy corneas?
In cases of scarred corneas where a good image from the keratoscope is not possible, you cannot use this system. You need a good central 2.5 millimeters of the cornea. Have to be clear and transparent. Only then you can use the system.
Okay. Any other panelists want to make a comment? Can please go ahead. Yes, Boramani sir.
I want to make a comment here, and I want Dr. Raju to explain the audience, because this must be the question in many people's mind. First thing is that I have got a limited experience because I struggled a lot in fitting the hardware. Everyone's microscope size is different. Now he is giving customized hardware, that is a LED ring, for each and every type of microscope. At my time when I got it, I struggled almost 2 to 3 months for fitting that, so I started this technique very late. But this is my observation at Dr. Rajiv's place also, in his observation. Don't be under the impression that all clear corneas are completely obedient. There are few percentage of the cases where you are not able to viscomodulate the corneas. But with Dr. Rajiv's experience, he can explain in a better way that there you come to know that this technique may fail. Technique means the surgery will not fail, but the multifocality may fail. And one more thing I want Dr. Rajiv to explain on this, that many people have got this question in their mind. How come this corneal modulation be possible with visco? Because regularly in our surgery we are injecting visco at various places. Maybe we'll be injecting at different corners. So some people still, they don't believe this, how this happens. But with the software now you know that the shape of the cornea is changing, the long axis is changing, and somehow questions in the mind. I think a couple of questions have come also, whether then this can be applied to the temporal incisions and incisions at other sites. I think Dr. Raju can explain these things in a better way.
Yes, firstly, you cannot apply it to a temporal incision for a very simple reason, that the whole geometry has been calculated and the algorithm has been made assuming that the incision will be superior. As you will be able to imagine, that post-operative, the aim of the software is how post-operative cornea will be, depending on how the pre-operative cornea is and when it is cut for 6 millimeters at 12 o'clock. So you cannot use it if you shift your incision to temporal or nasal or whatever. It is fixed. Second thing about the use of the keratoscope, sorry, I'm just digressing a bit and coming back to the hazy corneas, is the system can be used in any case where you get a good image from your keratoscope. Once that is obtained by the computer, the system can be used. Now coming to the cases where you cannot modulate the cornea, these are the corneas which are less than normal elasticity. The whole surgery principle depends on the fact that cornea is a part of an elastic sphere. Now, if the cornea is not a part of an elastic sphere, the entire logic will collapse and you cannot modulate this cornea. But it's a plus side to it. The plus side is, if the cornea is not so elastic, you do your small incision cataract surgery, the elastin is missing in the cornea, therefore you will anyway not get huge vertical astigmatism. You will get very less astigmatism. So you don't need the system in these corneas. Second, how to diagnose which cornea is not having enough elasticity. First, easiest thing is to look for the arcus. The people who have a huge arcus usually do not have an elastic cornea. I cannot quote a study on this, but I'm sure with all the panelists are extremely highly experienced, they must have seen it for themselves, that if there is a huge arcus, then there is no elasticity in the cornea. The cornea is almost like wood. And then in these cases, you anyway don't get a lot of astigmatism. Second is a scarred cornea with heavy opacities or heavy healed injuries, which are seen in cases who have healed herpes simplex infections, cases where there has been a lot of trauma. These cases don't do very well because the corneal surgery, the corneal elasticity is less. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Actually, just I wanted to give the input about what Nikhil has sent to me by the team NTOT. I think Raman, Nikhil and Tarun, they have done a wonderful job. Before we go to the next question, I just wanted all the audience also to know that this topic, webinar of ISM SICS, have been scanned by nearly 2,045 people. The attended audience is nearly around 1,400.
Wow.
And to add, the more interesting is 40 countries have scanned this There are more than 2,045 clicks today. And to name a few, of course, India, the top 10 countries which have been viewing it is India, Indonesia, United States, Bangladesh, Philippines. I'm going in the order. Philippines, United Kingdom, Australia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, Singapore, Japan, and so on and so forth till the 40th country which is watching. I think it's a good participation, good start from all the mentors, Dr. Amulya Sahu sir, Dr. Boramani sir, Dr. Parikshit Gopte, Dr. Debashish Bhattacharya, Dr. Satanshu, Dr. Dhaliwal sir, all the seniors, including the pioneers, Dr. Rajiv, who have been able to make it so successful. I think the kudos go to the team Entourd, who have made it so lively, who have made this presentation internationally possible. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you, Raman, for making it possible. And we move on to the next question. To Dr. Dev Prasad, he is here. So, Dr. Dev, the question asked to you was, what is your preferable incision against the rule astigmatism?
Eye against the rule astigmatism, right? Okay. So eye against the rule astigmatism, you can just see which go to the steeper meridian and put a Frohn incision. Just respect the incisional funnel. If you can make a incision depending on the grade of cataract, you can deliver the nucleus. Okay.
Thank you. And there is also one request from Dr. Nirmal from Cuttack and Dr. Bharat Patel from Surat. Sir, they joined late, so they wanted to know more about the software. I think by the end of this panel discussion, you can repeat it and you can show it to the rest of the people what it really means. Any points from Dr. Miguel from Philippines?
Yeah, I have a few questions, but probably the inventor of the technique has already figured it out. But my first concern is the depth of the knife as it enters into clear cornea. What is the guide as to how deep we're going into clear cornea? It seems like that's one thing I'll have to learn if I'm going to do this. And secondly, what is the A-scan formula program for calculating the IOL pre-op that our good doctors are using in calculating the IOL if you're going to do this technique?
Yes,
Is it the Hages? Is it Holiday? I'd like to know.
Yes, sir. Sir, before I answer your question, I would also, just like Dr. Srinivas Joshi, I would like to thank Entourd and all of you, because after the lockdown, I started worrying whether I'll forget surgery. So it's been a nice thing to have some revision here. Coming back to your question about how deep, it is. See, I use an extremely standardized blade. When I take the first incision on the sclera, the depth to which this bevel goes is exactly 45 microns, because it is published by the company that the bevel thickness is 45 microns. Now, once I go in with this blade, I make sure that I remain at the same thickness throughout the tunnel by focusing on the small blood vessels which are anterior to the knife. So I don't judge my depth by translucency. I look at the small vessels on the sclera, and that tells me whether I am exactly at 45 microns. So the cornea which is left to cut is whatever is the corneal thickness minus 45 microns. So one stays at that depth. So to control the depth, two things. One is the bevel, which is published by the manufacturer. You insert the knife exactly up to the depth of that bevel. And secondly, then to remain in that plane by monitoring where you are with reference to the vessels on the sclera. The next question about IOL power calculation, this is not my area of specialty. My son has developed a huge technique how to calculate the power depending on A-scan, IOL master, as well as pentacam, depending on the corneal thickness, depending on the other eye, and depending on if the other eye has an IOL, the outcome of that, and depending on spectacles. So almost that much time is spent finding the IOL power as we spend for our normal surgery. So it's a totally hybrid approach with various systems, various formulas, and various thinking that goes into it, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I quit now.
Sir, unmute please. Sir, unmute please.
Yeah. Sorry, any other questions from the panelists? We have 10 more minutes left before the NTOT goes on for the next meeting. Yeah, Boromani sir, please go ahead.
No, it is not a question. I want to have a comment. Now, this question must be in the audience mind that they have not seen the Dr. Raju's technique of nucleus management, because today's topic is only smart software guided smart incision. But I want to tell that this technique, the incision technique, can be combined with any of your nucleus management technique. It is not necessary that you should follow his technique of nucleus management. Whatever technique you are following for the nucleus management, you can continue. Only the modification is use the software for the incision. Now I am using AC maintainer. My technique is different for all cases. Now here, and I used to do most of the cases without viscoelastics. But if I want to do smart incision, I have to use viscoelastic. And second thing, there was a discussion about cortical fragments or nuclear fragment remaining in the scleral tunnel, because they can be a potential site for inflammation. So always you have to, at the end of the technique, you have to irrigate your scleral tunnel to be completely free of these particles. In my technique, because I use the AC maintainer, I swipe the depositor multiple times to the main tunnel, and this takes care of it. Everything is washed out because the AC maintainer is continuously going on. I used to use AC maintainer right throughout the technique, but if I have to do smart incision, then I start the AC maintainer only after taking the incision. So till that time I follow Dr. Raju's technique and then switch over to my own technique. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ranjit sir, go ahead.
This will be my last comment.
Yes, sir.
And it is non-cataract remark. I want everybody on the panel as well as in the audience to say a prayer for my friend Dr. Miguel Sarabia and his children. They are at the front in New York fighting COVID, both his son and daughter. Mickey, we are there with you.
Sir,
My children are,
Mickey is a son to me.
they are ICU nurses in Sinai Hospital or Baltimore, Maryland. And that's near where all the serious patients are going to be. So thank you for your
Nothing to
concern.
worry. All our prayers are with them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have a question again to Dr. Rajiv Raut, sir. What is the mechanism that is giving again the bifocality, and how does everybody has the same question again and again? The angle kappa changes.
I think I already answered this, but I'll try to answer it in short once more. See, the eye is basically X-cyclorotated. And when you are changing the flat meridian into a certain desirable meridian, then you are shifting the apex of the cornea. When you shift the apex, the angle kappa will change. That's the mechanism of change in angle kappa.
Okay, sir. There's one more question. Is CCT must before the surgery? By Dr. Archana Singh from Pune.
Right now, we do not have CCT as a part of the algorithm, but but we have already kept space in the formula for CCT because I think it will be important. A lot of work has to go into incorporate it in the algorithm because we need a very large amount of data. And I'm expecting this data to come from people who are already using the A2K system.
Okay. And one more question from Dr. Preeti Zingade from Belgaum. That is there any role of OVD injection technique in the smart SICS technique?
What injection? Viscoelastic.
Viscoelastics.
Oh, you have to inject the viscoelastic in the anterior chamber in the meridian which is intended in front of the iris, and very little quantity is enough. If you inject too much, then it spills over and comes into the center. That's all that matters.
Hello.
And any thing about biometry, special technique or any other methods of biometry would you suggest for this surgery?
No, the biometry technique remains the same. And my son Aditya has developed a biometry procedure rather than a technique where he uses many instruments and a lot of history and a lot of different formulas to come to the correct power. So it's a different subject, I think.
Dr. Miguel, you raised your hands. You had any question?
Yeah, what type of viscoelastic? Are we using the heavy viscose or just the methyl cellulose?
To start with, I use methyl cellulose, and if I find that it is not doing the job, then I have the high molecular weight viscoelastic ready with me, and it is used only in cases where it's required.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I think we come to the end. Kuke sir, last question.
Yeah. I just want to add from the learner's perspective, without the doubts, you please start doing the cases with this technique. The results are extremely good. I have been using just HPMC, PMMA lenses, and there is in 80% of the cases we get 6 and N6 or N8. The results are extremely rewarding. Without going too much into the theory part of it, practically by following the every stepwise instructions given by Rajiv, we are going to achieve the results. You start it, see your results, and then you can validate by yourself. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I think we come to the end of this session. I thank NTOD and all the panelists, the speaker, and all the founder members of ISM SICS. And I think I should profusely thank our delegates of more than 1,400 people who made this first ISM SICS webinar a grand success. So looking at this success rate, I think we are going to launch a series of webinars. So I think I discussed this with Dr. Jagannath sir and Dr. Amulya Sahu sir that next we are going to come up with the postgraduates on the basics and the simple techniques of how to perform SICS, where I think most of the postgraduates like first year, second year would like to know more about these techniques. And I am a man who is very fond of the postgraduate. So I want something to do as a secretary of ISM SICS. I think we should do something for our postgraduates. And after taking over charge as the secretary of ISM SICS, I think I'm being bestowed by the big responsibility by Sahu sir and Boromani sir. We are trying to go ISM SICS more digital, and we are trying to make a video blog where you can put your surgeries after it is being screened by the administrator. And we are going to increase the membership of the ISM SICS also. I request the members who have attended here and who have not been a member of ISM SICS, please log on to the ISM SICS Facebook page or the website and please become a member. Until you become a member, we cannot make it a strong body. There are already more than 800 members now, but 1,400 people have viewed this. I think many more are yet to become the members. So I request the people who have viewed today to please go on, log on, and try to become the member of this prestigious society. And yes, Dhaliwal sir. Go ahead.
Since this is the first webinar and we have such a big audience, I would just like to remind, if things go right and God willing, next November we'll all be meeting at PGI for the 4th World Conference of ISMS ICS. Just keep that date and those dates in mind.
It's in 2021, right?
2021, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
2021.
this year, actually, the first international conference has been planned in Thailand. The dates are November 26, 27, 28, but still we do not know about this COVID crisis. How long is it going to take and how safe is it travel outside India? But let's keep our finger crossed.
In a couple of months, we should be able to know.
Yeah, in a couple of months we should be able to know. Let's pray God, let's keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully the crisis resolves soon, and we should be able to make our first international presence. Although there are 40 countries which are being viewed today, I think it's a phenomenal thing, and I request all your delegates to please become a member and post any criticism or any suggestion you want to make. You can always go on to the website and put your suggestions or any modifications you want to do, and also on the Facebook page as well. Even if you like it, then please like it on the Facebook page, so that the organizers will get some support to do the things more better, or if we can perform in a more better fashion. Sahu sir, we are actually trying, but your voice is not audible to us. No sir, we are not getting your voice. Yes, Dhaliwal sir, last comment.
Just wanted to add, as we were going through the proceedings of this webinar, so many requests were coming in from friends to join that ISMS ICS group, and side by side on my mobile I had been approving all of, and I'm sure we have added more than 100 members to the group now during this 1.5 hours. Thank you. Welcome everybody.
And I think we should thank the anchor also for...
Yes, very much. Dr. Joshi has done a wonderful, very professional
Conducted
anchoring.
very professionally, and we thank Entod also for giving us the opportunity.
Yes, sir. I think here we come to the end of the meeting because Entod is going on with another meeting. Thank you very much, and we'll be coming up with the next webinar very soon, within 15 days, and we'll be going to release the topic very soon, within a week, and so that we all can join you again and have it a more better and a memorable webinar in the next one. So I think from Salamat, thank you, sir. It's
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
To all the international audience here. Thank you very much, all the panelists, Entod, speakers, and all the delegates who have made it a grand success. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir.